I received an email from Colin Firth, which is very short. It said, "Dear Omid, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but last night I had a dream that you were a lap dancer. I just thought you should know." So I wrote back, I said, "Dear Colin, how strange, I had the same dream, and your check bounced." To which he replied, "That's because the lap dance was wholly unsatisfactory." Colin has a great love of alternative stand-up comedy, and the alternative movement has been alive in Britain in comedy since 1979. And it was a reaction to the mainstream, which had elements of sexism and racism. And tonight I'll be reading from Jeremy Hardy. It's a real honor to read for Jeremy Hardy, who has so little faith in his own words, he wouldn't show up himself to read this. So I'm reading it. I have to also explain that there is a punchline you may not get here. It says the hamster joke, which is a reference to Richard Gere, who... Okay, so some of you up to speed with that. Richard Gere... We've got a very cool crowd here. Richard Gere famously used a hamster for sexual purposes. That's the precursor now for Freedom by Jeremy Hardy, How to be Truly Free, written on the 7th of October, 1993. In the course of this brief talk, I shall be focusing on ways in which we can achieve that rarest of commodities, freedom. Of course, the only reason that I'm able to discuss this issue is that in our country, we have absolute freedom of expression up to a point. But even here in Britain, speaking to you today, there are legal restraints on my freedom of speech. For example, the police could prosecute me if I were to say something which is an incitement to racial hatred, although it's much more likely that they'd write it down and use it later. Moreover, anyone addressing a gathering of more than 5 persons is forbidden by law to call on the armed forces to mutiny, to demand an uprising against the Queen, to divulge an official secret, to commit blasphemy, or to tell the hamster joke. Well, there you go. That was good that I explained that before. Still didn't get a laugh, so I'll tell Jeremy that. It's doubtful whether anyone can have total freedom. When a man says he is free, does he really mean that he is wholly independent in thought and deed, or does he simply mean that he's not doing anything at the moment? But even if complete freedom is an unattainable goal, there are things we can do to maximize the amount of freedom which we enjoy. These things fall into 3 categories. 1, throwing off all forms of oppression. 2, staying out of prison. And 3, achieving inner freedom through breathing and relaxation. That's a meditation joke he's thrown in there as well. It's bad that I'm explaining the jokes as we go along, but in order to liberate ourselves from oppression, we must first know that we are being oppressed. And the great thing about Margaret Thatcher was that she left us in absolutely no doubt. That was a good joke. But what are the options for people living under oppression? Briefly, there are 3. They can knuckle under, rebel, or leave the country. Some people have fled the regimes in their own countries to come here. The British government does all it can to make asylum seekers feel at home by treating them as badly as they were treated from where they came from. The Home Office does, however, deport anyone whom it considers to be an economic migrant, along with anyone facing a death sentence or torture when they get back. But what can we in Britain do? What can we in Britain do to avoid being oppressed? The best way not to be oppressed yourself is not to belong to an oppressed group. It is frankly reckless to be female, gay, or black in a society so clearly fraught with prejudice and discrimination. If you must belong to one of those groups, it's best to become rich and Tory like Joan Armatrading, who is female, gay, and black. Curiously, the tabloids have for years told us that left-wing councils give all their money to black lesbians. If that were true, you'd think Joan would have sufficient gratitude to vote Labour. Thank you very much.